Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I am your host Shaista Safi for this special program with our very special guest. Today we have with us members of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Kashmir, and without further ado I'll first introduce our members, our group members here, and then we'll talk about Kashmir issue and other issues related to it. First of all, let me introduce you to our first guest, Mr. Christopher Michael Leslie. You are Chairman, All-Party Parliamentary Group on Kashmir, and you are a British Labour politician, and you have been Member of Parliament, Nottingham East, since 2017, and you have been part of this constituency even before in 2010, and you have been member for Shifley from 1999 to 2005, and you have a long list of portfolios that I'm not going into. Welcome to Pakistan, and thank you very much for taking out time from your busy schedule to give us this interview. Thank you and welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Our next guest viewers is Anthea McIntyre. You are the British Conservative Party member, European Parliament, and you are from Midland since you are serving since 2011, and you are part of parliamentary committees for employment, social affairs, agriculture, and rural development. Welcome to Pakistan, and thank you so much for taking our time. Christopher Leslie, I would like to ask you first. You are the chairman of this parliamentary group on Kashmir. What was the need to create such group on Kashmir, and how this idea came into that you need a group on especially for Kashmir? And do tell our viewers what was the motive of behind coming to Pakistan and visiting Azad Kashmir refugee camps, LOC, and how do you take it?
Well, first of all, remember there are lots of members of Parliament in the House of Commons in the UK and members of the House of Lords as well, and we often hear from our constituents in the community, many of whom are from Kashmiri Pakistani heritage, who have family and relatives and relations here, and they pass on their concerns and anxieties about this situation, which in turn makes us as members of Parliament think this is a serious issue.
True.
However, although we have letters and phone calls and meetings in Britain about this issue, and although we talk about it in theory there and look at the map, there's no substitute for coming and visiting in person, and the delegation that we decided to bring together was partly because we're conducting an inquiry into the human rights situation. We have, of course, asked the Indian High Commissioner in London to talk about their side of the story and so forth, but we haven't had any comeback to that invitation. But on the Pakistan side, they were very helpful in facilitating a visit, even to the line of control where we've been today. So hearing first-hand testimonies brings the issue to life, and it's certainly something that we'll be able to incorporate in our report and hopefully eventually debate back in the House of Commons in London.
That is true. Anthea, I'd like to know that being a woman and being a parliamentarian, you have heard about many sexual violences against women in different conflict zones in the world. When it comes to Kashmir, Kashmir is very infamous about being home to many rape victims and half-widows. How, as a parliamentarian, you are convincing your colleagues in European Parliament to talk about Kashmir and Kashmiri women? How are you taking this case, particularly about the Kashmiri women?
Well, I'm very pleased to be chairman of the Friends of Kashmir group in the European Parliament, something I've done for quite a while. But this is the first time I've actually been able to come to Pakistan and come to Kashmir and see how things really are on the ground. And I've been very moved by some of the testimony we've heard, particularly from women. And I have two things. First, I have a conference next week, and I'm hoping that some of these women will be able to come and give their own testimony there.
Sure.
But I think it's very important to encourage women to give voice to their experience, and wherever possible to actually play a part in the democratic process. So I encourage women to stand up and say what they think and not feel that they have to rely on a man to do it for them.
True, that is true. So you have had meetings with Kashmiri youth here in Islamabad and Muzaffarabad, and you had meetings with politicians. You met President AJK, Prime Minister AJK, and members of all parties through a conference in Muzaffarabad. You had a perception about Kashmir before coming to Pakistan. Did the perception change, and are you taking away with you these stories you heard on the line of control in the refugee camps? How different is the story you heard while sitting in UK and then coming to Pakistan?
Well, the first thing that strikes a visitor coming for the first time is how beautiful and scenic Kashmir is. Phenomenal, and actually a real jewel for the whole world to appreciate, if only it wasn't a conflict zone where people perhaps are deterred from visiting. And I think there's so much potential. If it wasn't for all of this expenditure and wasted effort on military conflict, it could be put into development and jobs and infrastructure and make this a very wealthy area.
Indeed.
And so that was one thing I'll take away. I also didn't realize that the line of control has several layers to it, and it involves several kilometers, and of course so many hundreds of thousands of troops, particularly on the Indian side of the line of control. And this is therefore a situation that is going to be very, very difficult to step away from. But I'm hoping that perhaps after we've obviously had the Pakistan elections, maybe after the Indian elections next year, when there's not so much electioneering, there might be a window of opportunity, a bit more rational, calm opportunity for both sides to have some dialogue and maybe step towards more confidence-building measures.
True, that's what we hope. We always hope. In one of your NCA, in one of your speeches, I heard you say that it is the responsibility of government of UK, you belong to UK, that when they deal a trade with India, they should bargain about what's happening in Indian-occupied Kashmir, that they should not trade some deals and then India is doing human rights violation in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Do you even think that in nowadays world, moral values are given that height and business interests are taken so back? So do you feel that moral values are still valid for the world?
I feel that completely, not just the UK government. I have very little influence there, but I'm in the European Parliament, where there are lots of people wanting to make trade deals with countries around the world. I think that human rights should play a part in this, and we shouldn't be saying free trade at any price.
True.
And the price of the human rights atrocities is too high to pay. So I would like to see human rights play much more of a role when we look at free trade deals.
Even when the world is more into the business interest, and how isn't it so unrealistic or idealistic thought that human rights are given more values, because we are not seeing it anywhere. Even when we see pellet guns, children are being hit, but still there are relations between different countries with India.
You must never stop being idealistic. I think that if we lose our ideals, we lose everything.
True.
So we should say this isn't acceptable, and that we have to frame our policies to respect human rights, fundamental rights, and we have to stand up for them. And wherever there are atrocities, and I have to say, as a member of the European Parliament, I constantly see atrocities in Iran, atrocities in Myanmar. There are quite a lot of people, very sadly, that are suffering. And so, obviously, my role as chairman of the Friends of Kashmir group is to give particular voice to Kashmir, but we should never ignore all the other places as
True.
well. And in a way, you should all join together.
As Anthea said about the Myanmar, that now the inquiry is under process. They are taking it into International Criminal Court. And what Myanmar military officer has done, he has to face genocide inquiry. Do you feel that the same inquiry can be conducted, what's happening in Indian-occupied Kashmir, by the hands of Indian occupational forces?
Well, it's not quite the same circumstance, but there are problems which the world ought to pay attention to and not sweep under the carpet. I think the most positive thing recently has been the United Nations Human Rights Commission report, which of course looks at both sides of the dispute. And although there are a number of issues on the Pakistan side, most of the questions that it raised in terms of human rights were on the Indian side of the line of control. And the question then becomes, will the international community want to challenge India in particular and say, look, if you have ambitions to be in the Security Council on a more permanent basis, if you have ambitions to step up to an international role, you really need to behave in the democratic, with respect to human rights way that we all want to see for a country that is acting at that level. So there are some levers that can be applied here, but I think in a way you have to show both countries, but India in particular, that it's in their own self-interest to step away from some of this this particular type of behavior.
India, as Leslie said, that after United Nations report, India, what was the response of India? That it is highly motivated, this is fabricated. How, when a country is saying that a UN report is fabricated, it is highly motivated, how can people like you and people like us demand India or ask India to even ponder upon what India is doing in Kashmir?
I think we have to recognize that India is a great nation, a long-standing democracy. It's made huge progress. I've visited a couple of times. I've been to factories and farms and all sorts of things. And the progress of that country is impressive. But there is a stain on its reputation, which is Kashmir.
True.
And I cannot understand why they wouldn't want to resolve the situation. They, I know, argue that it isn't possible to have a plebiscite. I don't understand that. But even leaving those things aside, I cannot see any justification whatsoever for using shotguns on children.
True.
And we've seen ghastly cases of children being maimed and blinded and killed. And that is just totally beyond the pale. And as I say, I can see no justification for firing on children, whatever they do. So I just don't think India can try and justify that.
Okay, Christopher, Leslie, as we see that the world knows a lot about what's happening in Palestine and what Israel is doing. We saw recently that India is doing what Israel has done in Palestine by settling people from outside to Israel. Can you see the comparison between what Israel is doing in Palestine and now India is following the same footsteps by settling the non-Kashmiris in Kashmir?
Yes, I think there are, sadly, different tactics countries use that when they have territory in disputed circumstances, in order to cement their hold on that, different tactics such as settlements can be used, and this isn't going to help create a long-term solution. It's just going to create more division and animosity over the longer term. But unless the international community says it's not acceptable, as Anthony was saying, to behave in these particular ways, and is prepared to stand up and confront those countries and set aside perhaps some of the shorter-term trading advantages and so forth, because these things matter. Unless the rest of the international community are going to say that, I don't think there's going to be much change. So this isn't just a bilateral issue between Pakistan and India. Obviously, the people of Kashmir themselves have a right to have a say, but the wider community too is going to be part of this solution, just as it would be in finding a solution between Israel and Palestine. That requires the whole community. And just as it did in Northern Ireland, in the UK, where when the Republic of Ireland and the United Kingdom overcame many, many decades of disputes, they did so by quite brave steps, in that case deciding to share governance in quite an unusual way. So all sides had a stake in what was going forward. That's that kind of imaginative solution that I think we're going to need in Kashmir.
Anthea, our program is watched by Kashmiri people as well. Kashmiri women will be watching you. What is the main message you would like to give to Kashmiri women who are watching you right now, who are under occupation and are looking towards you, that you are going to hold a program in Brussels on 27th about Kashmiri women, about the occupation in Kashmir? What is your message to Kashmiri women, especially to women?
I think from the women that we've met on this trip and the women who have given testimony to us, I come away with a great admiration of the courage and the dignity, but also the persistence and the determination of women. And I pay tribute to that. And I think my message is keep on. That's the way to succeed. And your voice will be heard, and we will give voice to you next week in Brussels, and we'll keep on until we get a solution.
Hopefully. Christopher Leslie, MP, thank you so much for giving us your time from your busy schedule. I know you have been very tired and we took a lot of your time. Thank you so much for taking out your time. Anthea McIntyre, thank you so much for giving us your time, and thank you for the efforts you are making for Kashmiri people. Viewers, as Arundhati Roy said, that Kashmiris are not voiceless people, they are unheard people. People would start hearing to them, and people have to hear to the voices of people of Indian occupied Kashmir. That's it from Islamabad. This was Shaista Safi holding a special program. Take care.